Welcome back to Serious Talk, Salesforce at Scale. I'm your host, Greg Banks. Thanks for coming along. If you've ever watched the field service team chase paperwork, scroll a Gantt looking for risks, or roll a truck that didn't need rolling, this one's for you. Today, I'm joined by Ali Nelson and 𝗷𝗫𝗄𝗃, two of our practice leads, and we're walking through a full day in the life of a field service appointment with Agentforce layered in at every step. We get practical about deflection and triage, AI-assisted scheduling and rebalancing, voice-driven tech reports in the mobile app, post-visit wrap-up, predictive maintenance on asset records, and how performance coaching shows up for technicians and managers without adding any headcount. This is about efficiency. This is about scalable solutions. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to Serious Talk, Salesforce at Scale. Al and Ali back in studio virtually today. Thank you guys for joining me.
Of course.
Glad to be here.
This is going to be a fun episode for me, despite the fact I won't be talking a whole lot in it. My on-ramp into Salesforce was because I was an engineer in the field doing field service. And I watched IT destroy multiple CRM systems and eventually volunteered to get involved. And that's what led me to learn about Salesforce. And did not know till I got serious about field service, but it's a product we do a lot about. We just had an episode with Bobby not long ago talking about the field service platform. But today we're going to go a little bit deeper in this. We're actually having some cross-branding in our podcast. We're bringing AI into the field service conversation. So we're going to talk a little bit about the field service cloud, the platform, if you will, but specifically going to focus on what gets empowered or it gets more efficient, whatnot, through what AI is bringing to the table. So I'm going to hand it off for you two to focus on the product, but thank y'all for coming here today. I'm looking forward to hearing about this.
Yeah, I think it's a really important topic to talk about because as a lot of industries are moving forward so quickly with, making a lot of things agent-based, there's still industries where a lot of work is done by individuals in a field. You can't send an agent to a customer's house to perform work for them. And so we're hearing a lot of questions around, well, how can I take advantage of AI tools within my field service solution? I think that there are just a lot of questions around how can I make this tool work best for my business and how can I get ROI on it? So I think it's a really good topic to explore. And we want to start today by really kind of going through a day in the life of an appointment and where we can start building AI features in to use Agentforce and bring some value into field service. So I think it makes sense to start at the beginning, Al. Let's talk a little bit about kind of like intaking and triaging potential field service appointments. So what we would typically refer to as pre-dispatching. When we need to create an appointment, how can Agentforce and AI help us?
Yeah, so the intake and triage process is probably the most important thing, the most important aspect of this all, because the best field service is when you don't have to provide field service at all. So, the best thing for a company is to never have to roll a truck, or at least minimize how often they have to roll a truck. And really what we're talking about here is deflection. So we want self-service as much as possible. We want a system to be able to help us determine when we actually need to roll a truck, when we need to bring somebody on site. And we have such great tools for that now with Agentforce Service Agent to be able to basically intake information, determine, do we actually need to engage with a customer at a level where we have to send somebody out? We also have tools where we can actually have a customer, basically we can remote into their setting. We can have them share what they're looking at, and we can then process that information to determine, do we even need to do anything? So if you imagine getting a call from a customer and they have a problem, they need somebody out right away, you know that half the time it's just turning something off and turning it back on. But, we want to give the customer that full service experience. So we have them actually share with their phone, take it to the device, show the error, the issue they're seeing, and walk them through that process and potentially divert ever having to send somebody out on site at all.
And I think it's also for a lot of folks who are using field service, these are industries that are generally home services that homeowners can get pretty worried about and could be a lot of emergencies. I'm a homeowner myself. I think about when I've had to call to bring somebody into my house for water cascading from my ceiling, for surprise mold that I found, things like that. And often when we're thinking about the call center employees who are intaking those potential issues, I think that AI can also really help with the speed there. Because as a homeowner, whoever is going to get out to my house the fastest is who's getting my business, because I'm worried about my home. And so things like, we talk to a lot of people about having knowledge articles that your agent, that your human agents, that your individual users can reference, having case history that they can look at to see how a problem was resolved before. But reviewing those things takes a lot of time. And so adding in tools like even an internal agent that can help sort through that information, so that as you take a call, customer has water cascading from their ceiling. Okay, here are the questions that have helped us get to a resolution before, and here's what it's helped us in the past. So I think it can get through that kind of information really quickly.
Definitely. And I think also on the business end, so if we're talking B2B, you're working with a customer who has a lot of maybe air conditioning units. They might have hundreds at a site. If we can have the customer take a picture of a barcode that has an asset number on it, we can then feed that information back in and pull up the asset service history for that specific unit. That way we can, shortcut the amount of time it takes to review the history, see what might be the issue, and determine very quickly how urgent this issue may be.
Yeah, it can just get so complex. And there's something to be said for giving your call center folks information at the tip of their fingers. But what happens when there's a lot of information to look at?
Exactly. The more we can minimize the information load and get straight to the point and what we need to be looking at, the better for everyone.
Well, and then we get to the point of, okay, once we know what that issue is, now we have to schedule and dispatch. And I know that scheduling can be a challenge for a lot of people to set up. We've obviously set it up a number of times together. But what are your favorite AI-enabled tools to help with the scheduling process?
Definitely. So Salesforce has been putting a lot of energy into the Copilot functionality within the dispatch console and field service. So this has always been typically a very manual process, working with schedules and, all the different variables that can go into finding the best possible slot for any work order or appointment that needs to get scheduled. But now there are tools that can really speed up this process and leverage AI to better cut out some of these steps of, looking at the schedule, looking at maybe a map, trying to figure out who's closest to this at any given time. These tools now can look at an entire schedule. We can pull up an entire day or even a week if we need to, and be able to determine, based on all the factors that we're looking for, where the best slot for an appointment will be, and to very quickly rebalance the schedule if we find that, hey, maybe a weather event happened, like there's a huge rainstorm, there's going to be a lot of leaks happening, and we need to reprioritize appointments very quickly for that. These AI tools can now allow you to do that with a handful of clicks. And as long as you've set up your configuration to match what you're looking for, it essentially spits out the correct optimal schedule for you without a lot of manual intervention and dozens of hours of work like it would be typically.
Well, and I also really like the prediction building tool, because I think one thing that we hear a lot is folks say like, hey, we always schedule in 2-hour blocks, in 4-hour blocks, because that's about what we need. And the thing is that once you have a tool that can calculate distance between appointments, once you have a tool that can actually get down to an individual product and asset level and see how much time you might need, you might be able to fit in more than 2 appointments a day. And obviously, the more appointments you can get to in a reasonable amount of time, the more money you can make, the more efficient you can be, the fewer trucks you have to roll total. And so what I love is, with Prediction Builder, we've seen it be able to tell people like, hey, here's what you can do to make this appointment a little bit shorter. Here's the amount of time we think it needs to be based on historical appointments. But also, hey, here we have things like first time fix rate. Here are some recommendations for a different resource you could assign to be more efficient with it, because this person has a better skill match, things like that. So I think a lot of folks are very tied to, hey, we're going to stick with the status quo, but really there are tools that can help you be more efficient than you think you can be. So I've gotten to work with a Copilot agent in that dispatch console before. I really like it. Being able to ask it questions. I think another side to kind of talk about will be from a management perspective. Some businesses are managing one location. Some businesses are managing multiple locations with multiple service territories. And it's really tough to look at a large Gantt schedule with hundreds of resources and understand where your risks are. And so I also want to call out that interacting with that Copilot agent is so user friendly. It does take a certain degree of trust to figure out do I believe that this is all the issues that there are? Because, sometimes you might think there are more out there, but you can say, hey, what appointments do I need to pay attention to right now instead of taking 20 minutes to manually scroll through all of them with your
Exactly.
eyeballs?
Where are my risks? And bubble those up very quickly.
Yeah, I like to call it like actionable insights. Like, show me what needs my activity on it right now in order to correct some issue. So then once we have appointments scheduled, then we get into technician experience. And I know that a lot of folks love Field Service Mobile because it has offline capabilities and they're worried about, well, how can we embed AI tools in here? But there are several AI tools that are already built in. You want to talk about those?
Absolutely. So I think people are generally good with technology. When it comes to field service, I hear from management often that they're worried more about the human aspect. So it's really about how technicians will work with technology and how they'll be able to update information in the app to, set statuses to say, here's what actually happened during this work. So we can then feed that information back into the system for the next time that customer calls. So one thing I think they've done really well here is giving a voice to report functionality. And that's really key for people that maybe they're very busy, they're hot, they're in the sun, and they're working and expecting them to type a really thorough response of exactly what they did when they were on site is just not always realistic. So being able to use voice recognition to be able to enter this information in, which then leverages prompt builder templates in the background to produce a structured service report, pull all the parts that were used. And really, probably most importantly, is to create a customer-facing summary that's professional. Because I think that's the thing people are always worried about is, hey, when I give my customer what they did on site, like I want that to be reviewed and I want it to be professional and I don't want it to be too colloquial or, have language in there that I don't want customers to see. So all of this can now be done automatically through the Field Service mobile app using all of this new AI technology, which is really fantastic.
And I think too, in terms of making life easier for techs, because they're the person that is actually the face of your business for your
Mhm.
client. Like, yes, your client will interact with a call center agent, with marketing, but this is a person who's at their home. And so you don't want them to feel frustrated with the technology they're using because customers will see that. And so I also really like how Agentforce can interact with sort of a guided experience because for a lot of folks in the field, they are experts at what they're doing. They might be experts in roofing, they might be experts in HVAC, we in whatever industry they're in. And a huge concern we hear often is training. So
Mhm.
obviously, I love flow. I love building flows for interacting with the app and walking people through what they need to do. But sometimes that can be really tough to build as an admin. So using Agentforce to go and call the right flow at the right time to guide a user through what they need to do instead of relying on them to learn where they need to click in this app to fill out different forms, I think can be really helpful.
Absolutely. And really a key thing that we keep on butting up against here is putting the right information in front of the right person at the right time. And I think that's one thing these new tools are able to do better than we ever have in the past is contextually understanding what the technician needs to see right now. So I'm at this home. Here's a list of all the assets that have had service history and pulling the correct information up front and showing that to them when they need it at the moment, rather than having somebody on site who's tired and they need to get the job done and they're clicking around trying to figure out, okay, where is this piece of information? I know it's there. I remember I was here before. I remember seeing it
Yeah.
and I can't figure out where it is. So the more that we can push that information to somebody directly, the more we can get them to interact with the app in the way that we hope they would and leverage the information that we already have in the system to.
Absolutely. And I think the last piece, and that this is something that we talk about with not only Salesforce Field Service, but also there are partner tools like 𝗫𝗫𝗄𝗃, is how do we make sure that we're getting the information we need in the field? So things like photo verification. So the Einstein Vision helps with that for understanding when the photos that we've taken are what we need. I know a lot of folks struggle with, hey, we didn't get the right types of photos or they weren't
Mhm.
quality enough. But then also things like we've used 𝗫𝗫𝗄𝗃 before with, they've got some of their OCR capabilities to take a picture of a form that gets filled out from a subcontractor and entering that data into Salesforce. But how do we really enhance the photo and video experience a little bit more too? Yeah. So then once we're able to fill out information a lot more easily, guided flows, using voice to text, using actual guided walkthrough steps. Hopefully, that's helping our back office team significantly
Mhm.
and helping make it easier to wrap up visits. So, talk to me about the post visit wrap up and follow up that you like.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is the most important part of the customer experience. And it's the easiest thing to let slip when things are busy and you're looking for the next thing to do, the next task that needs to be completed. This is often something that gets missed is the follow through. It's that closing the loop and making sure the customer understands what was done, how it was done, what was owed, what next steps are. And I think these are the things that are kind of low hanging fruit for AI to really work with because it can auto draft follow-ups, pull from a prompt builder template, all the information that's key to that customer, merge it into one place, send that information to the customer, or if we need to escalate, send that internal for another team maybe to follow up with. Tie that into warranty information. I mean, these are really key things that putting a person in charge of it feels unimportant in the moment when there's another fire happening. But if we're not completing one customer engagement and starting a new one, you're building a backlog that ultimately never gets closed. So I think this is one of the best areas, one of the biggest payoffs that we can have in this whole process using AI.
Well, and also, I mean, we hear Agentforce and we hear about AI tools that people can use. And I think a common misconception is that Agentforce has to be interactive agent based, meaning my people have to talk to an agent, et cetera. And it's like, no, Agentforce actually can be behind the scenes orchestrating a lot of this action and it can be kicked off by certain triggers. So it's also just harnessing this decision making power. I would say, Greg, what percentage of customers that we have implemented field service for, but told you before using Salesforce that they were manually reviewing every single job at the end of it. I mean,
Indeed.
90 to 100% of
Yeah.
customers are doing a manual review. This can take such a
And more than
huge
one
load.
time. And more
Yeah.
than one time, right? That's
Mhm.
the person inbound that's going to schedule it is going to make sure everything's in the ticket before they give it to a tech. The tech gets out in the field, they're going to read through everything to make sure it's right. They do their job, pass it back to back office for billing. They're going to go through everything. It's great that you want to make sure it's right, but that doesn't require human eyes anymore.
Well, and especially, I mean, that multiple touch point, when we talk to people about how much time it takes, it's an exorbitant amount of time to go review things. And especially when some of the checks they're doing are, did we get photos that we needed? Yes or no? Did we ask this question? Yes or no? And those are things that absolutely can be automated and we can have something else check. And there are definitely gray areas. I think, especially given that so much of work that field service customers are performing needs to be extremely high quality, there does need to be an element of decision of, is this up to our standards? And that's where training your agents to understand what your quality of standard is can really be super helpful. You can train your agent to say, hey, at our company, this is what we're striving for. Here are the markers of really great service for us, so that your agent can find those markers and, most importantly, find where those markers are not being met and then surface those to you, so that you can have fewer touch points and, honestly, just less manual labor on rereading things over and over again, and instead focus your time on fixing the ones that maybe aren't up to that standard so you can get everything up there.
That's right. And I think when we talk about back office, we're thinking customer service reps, the people that are closing out jobs. But also, if we go layer deeper, it's the people in accounting and finance who are closing out invoices and they need to reconcile parts that were used. And there are some really great tools within Agentforce and Agent Builder that can basically take all of these transactions and run them through and validate and can make sure that all of the invoicing and the parts usage is closed out in the back end, which is a huge operational headache for most companies, where that's a very, very manual process. Somebody's checking every box, making sure everything was done correctly. So this saves, I think, time at multiple levels for multiple roles on teams.
And,
Yeah, I know we're going to get into. I know we're going to get into some other items on this, but before we move into the kind of the next step, I really wanted to highlight the no detail left behind. As I mentioned, I started my career in this space. I can't tell you how many times I got to the field and I wasn't given all the right information to begin with, which sets me up for failure and definitely sets your client up for the most frustration. And on the back side of it, if we're doing our job right, if I'm the one in the field fixing the thing, my willingness and ability to put meaningful details back into the system, not just for that client, but we have arrived, people, at that place where data is power, right? So if I want AI to be able to do the FAQ real time of other people who had a similar problem, these were things we found in the past. Now, the quality and quantity of what I put in is actually going to pay dividends time and time and time again. So what I hear is I'm going to reduce the chance the person's ever going to get in the field and be unarmed with truth by doing good stuff on the front end, validate that before they go, and then make sure on the back end they capture all that. If you got to send somebody in the field, it's the most expensive avenue of what you can do for a customer. It's the most expensive thing you can do. But if you're going to do that, for God's sake, get all the value out of it that you can and do it on that. So the more times you can engage and make sure that white glove treatment, if you will, has been held up. Now it's such an easy thing to do, and you don't have to add headcount.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of folks, they do get worried about like, okay, well, then what will that person do if they're not manually reviewing every single job all day, every day? And that's exactly it. You want to free them up to do tasks that can add more value to your business. I think it's a common thing. Every single customer that we have ever worked with has said, yes, we would love to do this in the future, but we just don't have the capacity right now. Okay, well, this is how you can get yourself more capacity without adding more headcount or without trying to stretch yourselves too thin, is you can take some of those admin tasks that are repetitive, that can be codified, and then get your people working on things that are going to provide new value to you. I know that there are a couple more things that can help for back office. I mentioned earlier for the first time fixed rate analyzer, it both can analyze an appointment at the end and talk to you about, hey, this is why something was fixed on our first service appointment, or this is maybe why it wasn't. But then it can also add those predictions to future appointments. I think the other thing that we definitely are going to have some more episodes on later on is integration with ERP. I know we'll be talking about that in the future, but it's worth a call out that you can also have Agentforce trigger actions to integrate and send information to MuleSoft to send to your ERP, or to integrate with your payroll provider for job costing. There's a lot that you can do to trigger those actions in the back end.
That's right.
Yeah, and time is money there, right? So your customer wants a real-time balance. They want to know at the time you leave there, what am I going to owe? Have you reflected the payment that I just gave you? All that kind of stuff. Allie, again, going back to how many times people estimate, like we define work types and some of those things. They want to know what the P&L is. How much did it cost me to go do this? And the longer you wait to get that information, the greater the reduction of accuracy is going to be. So you're going to be flying blind at best or wrong at worst if people are just making stuff up as they go. So again, anything we can do to bookend that. And all these things that Allie just mentioned are not extra work on that field service person.
No.
They make you money by using what's between their ears to go do the thing they're experts at. So the tool needs to be a tool and make all those things easier to feed the stuff back so the back office can carry their part of the baton race without putting additional burden on that person. So
yeah, absolutely. So then let's talk a little bit about some additional areas. Obviously, when we're actually going through and doing install work or performing service that's being asked for, field service is also great for managing assets and maintenance plans.
Yes.
The real fun stuff. So let's talk about some predictive maintenance and how Agentforce 9.9 can help there.
Yeah, definitely. Preventative maintenance, I think, is kind of the cash engine behind a lot of businesses where they're really leveraging this service aspect to continue to generate that income and revenue over time. So there's some really great tools around Asset 360 and the ability to be able to pull in information for an entire service history on an asset and determine based on the trends when we think the next time that we're going to need to provide preventative maintenance is. And then suggest that, create the work orders, get people scheduled to go do that. And the idea is by doing that, we now have a specific service point that we can bring up with the client if we want to call them and say, hey, it's been X amount of months since we serviced your water heater. And, based on what we're seeing here, it looks like you're due for a tune-up, and try to use that to sell a maintenance plan moving forward. Some great sales assisted tools and also service assisted tools that really help to keep the business moving.
Well, and I mean, especially once we consider businesses that work across multiple asset types, the most powerful part of Agentforce, in my opinion, as someone who used to be in a call center and had to be reviewing records all the time is that it can identify trends in a tremendous amount of information without having somebody to manually report on it. So I think about things like, let's say that there's a new product you're installing that's tending to need service earlier than expected. So, we're getting a lot of service calls at the 10-month mark. Cool. You can have an internal agent and you can ask it things like, hey, are there any service trends you're seeing that I should take action on? And it can help identify things like, hey, this particular asset, this particular model number is needing service earlier. Let's go ahead and proactively call those customers and get out there in advance, so that they're not calling us for problems. It can really help you understand from the bulk of data that you've got what you might need to do about it. And, in a lot of cases, that can also help you find more work. I know everyone's trying to say, how can we stay engaged with customers? How can we get them on service plans? Well, it's by using your data to find things that will engage that customer and to find reasons for them to engage with you. All right. So then, wait, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, from our side, if you're the dispatching company, there's nothing more expensive than sending a person out. For the customer, there's nothing more fearful than having to have somebody come to your house to fix something, because it's generally gone from bad to worse. So again, anything you can do to avoid that is going to feel better to the client as well.
I mean, it's like when I get a letter from my car's dealer and they're like, hey, this part had a recall. We'd love to get it fixed for you. It's a lot better than me on the side of the road with something broken. It's a much better experience for me to be able to schedule and get that done in advance.
That's right.
Not that it happens all the time on my vehicle. However, so then, from an overall operational perspective, when we think about that kind of trend identification, some of the things that I really like to see is things like, how can Agentforce help me identify some big business decisions that could make a difference for us? Things like, what jobs are we having trouble scheduling because we don't have enough people with these skills? What areas are we seeing business in that we really need to get more people hired in because we're driving too long to get there? Where could we really benefit from a new branch? That kind of CRM analytics plus Agentforce is really able to give you answers at your fingertips that otherwise a lot of people are relying just on anecdotal evidence, just what the call center is getting a feel for. But then talk to me, Al, about performance coaching.
Yeah, this was actually one of the things I was really excited about, because I think when you're a technician, you're very much like on an island. You're out in the field every day, all day long. There's very little feedback in terms of, how is your performance going? What's happening in the moment? So what we can do with these new tools is we can actually have the system basically look at holistically all of the information from every technician and give real-time feedback on, hey, maybe your jobs are taking longer than your peers. So here are the things that you might be able to look at to shorten that window. You're fifth in terms, in the leaderboard in terms of installation time or first time fix. We can do these really great things to bubble that information up to the technician to give them real-time feedback. And then we can send the same kind of information back to the management team to let them know, hey, today, here are the things that we're seeing, or over this month, here are the trends that we're noticing. So you have these real-time feedback mechanisms to then work with the technicians to kind of fix those issues that are small in the moment, but large in the scheme of things.
Well, and I mean, when we're thinking about field service workforces, a lot of folks talk to us about how that workforce can be relatively fluid, or a lot of people have, multiple personnel changes. We have a lot of people actually promoting from within. So a lot of people who move up into foreman positions and so on. But we think about training for field techs. We are hiring people because of their ability to work with HVAC, because of certifications they have as an electrician, because of the skills that they have. And learning an app is a secondary thing. And we don't want that to be a burden. And so we think about this coaching, which, by the way, can be optional. If you've got someone who's worked with the company for 25 years, they don't have to use the coach. But for new folks, it can make a huge difference in ramp time and just their experience, how happy they are during their training process, because they're having a tool proactively help them instead of them having to figure it out themselves. And personally, when I see a dashboard and I see my name at number 4, I want to know what I have to do to get to number 1.
It's a motivator. It's a motivator. And it's a way to foster connection that I think is difficult to do otherwise.
It is, yeah.
I think this would go a long way to countering detractors as well, Allie. You and I have heard this, I don't know how many times. Field service people in general, this big brother's tracking me. I'm not putting everything I got here. Then they don't need me anymore, or I don't need big brother watching me. Well, I got to tell you, if I open this thing and it goes, hey, by the way, noticing your time's going up, here's a little thing to help. 100 times out of 100, I'd rather see that than find out in my annual review for the last 6 months, your time's been off and you're not getting that promotion. This is actually a way to avoid a problem from becoming a problem. Right now, it's just a symptom. Let's fix that thing and get you along. And who
And I
knows what you're
think
going to learn through it. So, yeah.
I think also like it does use actual data to make these recommendations. I don't know about you two, but I have been in a number, I've had 87 jobs. I have been in a number of entry level positions in my life where somebody has told me a new procedure for something that didn't make sense to me. When I worked retail, it was a new way to fold something or a new process for something. And I would say, well, why are we doing that? That doesn't make sense, because, we do it this other way for a reason because we see results. But this is not just, hey, management, you need to be faster, come up with a way to do it. This is saying, hey, based on the data, based on actual appointments that are happening, here's the common threads or the common actions that we're seeing in appointments that are faster than others. So if we do these things, the data backs us up. So it also means that we're able to help people make decisions and process changes to their business that are actually going to be effective and not just an idea that somebody has that they are not able to prove out. I think, Al, I think we're going to talk about this later when we talk about POC driven
Yes,
development.
absolutely.
So, we have some examples where, I don't know, Al, if you want to talk through an example here of what this can look like.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the technician end, having something that shows up specifically that gives just an overview of what's happening in that moment. So maybe we have things scheduled every day that looks at, for anybody who runs PM jobs, it's, looking at their HVAC PM jobs. Here's how far above or below the baseline you're running. And here are the things that typically make those appointments go faster. So giving a list of tips that can be run through. Anything like that we can push to the technician in real time to give them a quick sense of where things might be a little bit off or where they can improve is something that they can then turn an action on immediately on the job they're on at that moment. And then I think on the other side for the management team, we can bubble something up. We can push it to maybe Slack if that's the key tool that everybody's using. That gives, here's a breakdown of your technicians who are doing PM jobs. Here's how long these jobs are typically taken. Here are the people who are on the top versus bottom end of that. And here's the things we can do to speed this up. And if we do manage to speed this up, here's how much capacity we open up. So if we do that, that then gives you talking points to then take back to the team and say, okay, well, let's just speed up the process here. Let's insert some more PM jobs that we had pushed for next month and get ahead of the schedule.
Yeah. It's essentially hiring an efficiency manager who's able to read all of the data in your org faster than any person would ever be able to.
Exactly.
No matter how good you are with a spreadsheet.
Kill the spreadsheets. I was waiting on the line. That's right.
Well, Greg, I would love to see you I don't think that you could live without a spreadsheet, to be real honest.
I just want to go grocery shopping if I have to. This, again, I can't begin to tell you, this has nothing to do with consulting or podcasting. This is scars from years and years of being on the road. I've got to go in the field. My wife can attest to this. She used to travel with me. I'd drop her off near the beach and I'd go work all week and then pick her up on the way out. Can we stay a few more days? No. When I leave, I want to get home. So if I can show up at a client site, have some better idea what's coming, be guided through the things I've got to do. Like I'd much rather click OK, take a picture, do this and move on than type a bunch of stuff in. Anything the system's going to do to help me get back home to my family is a win. If somebody who manages a team of people that do that, the faster they do that, the more you get done with less people, the more profitable you are. Last, and probably most important, the whole purpose of all of this is to go solve a client's problem. So
right.
if you can do one thing is increase that first time resolution. If you can do that, you've got a happier customer, which will be a repeat customer. And I got to be honest, in the field, I'd much rather walk into happy customers than mad ones. It's just more fun. So there's so much to be gained by this, and the sky's the limit in terms of what AI will be able to empower us to do. So let the idea engines go. If you've got questions about that, you're looking at two people that can help. I'm not one of those. These two, they can help you. Reach out to us at SiriusTalk@SiriusSolutions.com. The address will be in the show notes. We'd love to talk to you about how to make your team more efficient. The data is what's driving it all, and your data is only going to be as good as how you set this thing up. So we'd love to be a partner with you in this. These 2 letters, man, they have disrupted every conversation we had planned for the year, haven't they?
Kidding.
But it's great to see one where it's actually bringing a tremendous asset. Knowledge is power, data is knowledge. So let's leverage that to do smarter things with our field people. Thank you guys for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us today. Big thanks to Ali and Al for walking through the whole arc of a field service day and showing where AI actually earns its keep. Everything we covered, smart triage, asset-aware scheduling, voice-driven reports, automated wrap-up, predictive maintenance, performance coaching, these all ladder up to the same idea. Fewer rolled trucks, faster first-time fixes, happier customers, and technicians who get to use what's between their ears instead of fighting their app. If you run a field service org, pick one stage of the day we covered and ask your team, how many human eyes touched this today? This is your first Agentforce target. If this episode was useful, follow the show, leave a rating, and share it with one person or service leader who's still reviewing every job by hand. A special thank you goes out to Jason Fowler for letting us use his song, Mystery Road. Show notes, links, and contact info are all in the description. Questions, ideas, or a topic you want us to cover? Reach out at SiriusTalk@SiriusSolutions.com. Until next time, keep your trucks parked when you can, and when you roll one, make every minute count.